Sam Williams, Javonte Williams, and Trevon Diggs could all be playing for their jobs over the final month of the season. We'll tell you their upcoming future next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this football season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we're going to take a look at four players who are going into really big parts of the season. We've got 4 games left. I think 3 of these 4 players could be playing for their spots on the roster in 2026. And I want to start with Trevon Diggs, who is expected to play this week against the Vikings for the first time in months after dealing with this weird concussion/knee injuries, plural. I think it's just been a foregone conclusion, Landon, that he's going to be off this roster in 2026. But what if he plays really well over the last 4 games?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something to consider. And look, I mean, part of it is that he plays a position that clearly, I think, even if he does come back next year, you may have to look at drafting anyways, right? Like, you have a need at defensive back, whether it's corner or safety, and I think maybe both. And there's a chance that, even if you do like the way that he finishes up these last few weeks, you're probably still, adding another body into that group. But, if he does play well, then you still have years left on his contract. There might be some benefit to bringing him back. So I do think for Trevon, who, look, it's not even just the Cowboys. Like, other teams are watching what happened with Trevon this year and all the kind of craziness that surrounded it. And I think that's going to have an impact on his market if he decided that he wants to be a free agent. So whether Trevon's coming back with the Cowboys or going out on the free agent market, I think after the way that this year's kind of played out, he needs it to finish with the strong back half of the season.
Well, you made the case for him as a free agent. Remember, the Cowboys would have to release him for him to become a free agent. If you're an outside team looking at Trevon Diggs, you're going to look at a cornerback who is 28 years old, who's missed a lot of time with knee injuries, who's not the most reliable tackler, and whose play has really diminished over the last 3 years. And to me, that's a player that probably gets like a 1-year, $4 or $5 million deal in free agency, kind of like a prove it deal. Whereas I think if Diggs can have a strong end of the season in Dallas, maybe they rework the numbers a little bit, but his base salary is $14.5 million. Like, it just makes way more financial sense for Diggs to stay in Dallas if possible, but he's going to need to play really well over the final 4 games to do so.
Yeah, I mean, because it's not even, it feels like not even just kind of making up for inconsistent play. Obviously, there's been some weirdness between Diggs and the front office. So I think that, to kind of make it worth their while to kind of keep him, for the team to make it be made worth their while to keep him on the team. He's going to need to play really well and kind of counteract some of the bad vibes that maybe were going on earlier in the season between those two.
100%. And it's just the reason why you're really hoping this happens is because imagine if Diggs plays at a acceptable level, right? And it's back to not 2021, but maybe more like 2022, where, he was not getting the interceptions, but playing at a really high level.
Yeah.
If you have DaRon Bland, you have that version of Diggs, you have a Rebel still on a rookie contract, you have Kalen Carson. I mean, that's 4 cornerbacks that you feel pretty good about. You could still draft one, obviously, in the early rounds to give you some more help in that position. But I think you would feel completely different about the future of this defense if Diggs is able to turn back the clock. And again, it's a 4-game sample. It's not the biggest sample size in the world, but there's some good offenses that you're going to be facing in this stretch and some good receivers, including Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. This would be a great time to show that he's still a starting caliber cornerback in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think that's legitimately something that he still kind of needs to go out there and prove, right? Is that, I mean, I think, when he was out on the field, early in the season, he was coming off of an injury, but he was still going out there and playing, and he was still putting, tape out there. So he needs to counteract some of the bad tape that he's put out there and prove to folks that he still has the ability to go out there and be a guy that is, worthy of being a starting corner in the NFL. And more than that, maybe better than just an average starting corner in the NFL.
Do you think there's a chance the Cowboys already have their minds made up here? Because they could
Yeah.
designate him as a post June 1 cut, say 15.5 million, and just move on from, the entire Trevon experience, even if he plays well. Because I can see a scenario where, he does play well, and it's like, we just don't want to bother with this again. He's been too unavailable. He's been too unreliable. We just want to move on. We'll use that money to sign somebody else in the secondary.
I mean, certainly. Look, we still don't know exactly the totality of what happened with Trevon Diggs and, off field, in the building, out of the building. We know that something's gone on, but we don't really know the shape of how it's had an effect on the relationship with the front office of the Cowboys. So yeah, I think that there's certainly a chance that there is nothing that Trevon could do that could bring it back based on, potentially things that we're not aware of. But I also think that even if there isn't, even if that is the case, for Trevon's sake, right? Like if he's getting cut, he needs to put good film out there, because it's not a case where, he's going to get cut and just everyone's going to be like, well, it was just a personal thing with the Cowboys. That guy's still, worth giving 12, 15 million dollars.
See that happen.
Yeah. So he's got to play well just to kind of prove to not only the Cowboys, but teams outside the building that he's still a, viable option as a starting cornerback.
He's played 19 games over the last 3 seasons, and I would say at least half of those have been really rough, like really, really rough. He has had some good games mixed in there as well, but I do want to see what a better defensive line, because remember, he has not played a game with Quinnen Williams yet. This defensive line, for the most part, has played better over the last couple of games outside of that Detroit fiasco. Maybe with an improved pass rush, with a healthy DaRon Bland, maybe we see a better version of Trevon Diggs. I'm not counting on it, but I'm not necessarily dismissing it either.
Yeah, I mean, look, it sure felt like a lot of what was going on with Trevon Diggs was some bad technique as well. It wasn't just about the man versus zone covered thing, which I think is also feeding into this a little bit, because he is prefers to play more man coverage. But look, I mean, he's not going to get his choice of where he's going to go if he gets cut. Like, I mean, he's going to basically have, a couple of suitors if he can't find a way to put better tape with just at least better technique out there, not even just making plays or whatever, just playing solid technique and not, going to get your defensive coordinator burned when he calls something and you're using the wrong technique and getting beat deep because you're not playing the way that everybody else in the field is.
Last thing on Trevon. Do you think he starts this week against Minnesota, or do you think it's still Bland, Revel, Carson, and they rotate Diggs in? What would you do? I'm going to ask you that. What would you rather see them do?
I mean, I think that they'll likely kind of work him in, right? Like that's usually been the case with a lot of these situations, whenever the Cowboys have guys who are coming back from injury to a position in which, rotating is kind of more possible, right? Like they tend to like sew you back in, kind of a not so steep curve of play getting back onto the field. So I would imagine that it's kind of what we talked about, I think, last week when we thought he was coming back. I wouldn't be shocked if it's him and Revel kind of rotating those snaps on that one spot, and then Carson and Bland taking over the other 2 spots.
All right, I want to have a conversation about Javonte Williams, because there's a chance that he could run for like 1,400 yards this year. But the next 4 games are really critical for his future in Dallas. We'll tell you why next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. But that's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place live bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And live betting is the best when the game starts to shift. And you can usually feel it, right? When a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips just after a turnover. And FanDuel lets you jump into the action with live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly, player props that update as the game goes on, and you can bet on next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and so much more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com to place your live bets all year long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We'd also like to thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And if you're a true diehard Cowboys fan, the Everyday or All Access tier is built for you. You'll get one-on-one text access with Landon and I, all access episodes, an exclusive newsletter, and a 15% discount to the Locked On merch store. So head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to join the Everydayer Club and unlock all the access that you could ever want. And you can also check out the link in the show notes. All right, Lana, let's talk about Javonte Williams because he's been awesome this year. And I would like to see the Cowboys bring him back, but I do think the final 4 games of the season are going to be pretty telling. We've seen his yards per carry really drop over the last 6 games, and part of it isn't his fault. They just played so many games in a short period of time. But over the last 6 games, he's down to 4.1 yards per attempt. You're not really seeing a lot of the big runs anymore. Why is this stretch so important for Javonte?
Well, I mean, I think, what we've seen is that the offensive line has kind of tapered off a little bit in their performance for run blocking. And I think it's created a situation where Javonte is in kind of a tough situation, right? Like he has at times earlier in the season, made up for some of the miscommunications or, times when things weren't blocked up the way you want. And that's what's made this running game so good, especially early in the season. It felt like you were getting pretty decent returns from your young offensive line, but then even when you weren't, Javonte was making you right? And getting a lot of yards after contact. As the season goes on and as he incurs more contact, it's reasonable to expect that those numbers would go down as he kind of takes on the wear and tear of the season. So it's a tough spot. Like you kind of need the offensive line to help him out a little bit. But I think if you're trying to like really hone in on the value of Javonte Williams, I think this is a great way to do it because you have to see the kind of diminishing returns he's getting in the run game up front, and he's going to have to start kind of creating for himself. And to us, that's always been the kind of difference between the sort of guy you can get off the street anytime and the kind of bell cow backs that you want, right? Is the ability to create even when there isn't a lot there. So I think it may not, the last few games may not be a strong indicator of whether or not Javonte Williams comes back or not. I think that's likely to happen potentially. I think it's more just about, what kind of tier of running back are we talking about here? Is he able to continue to create even as the yards per carry numbers start to diminish as the season goes on, and finish strong? And if so, he could be, adding a couple $1 million to his, annual paycheck just because he, reached a kind of new tier of talent of where the running backs are.
So my philosophy on paying running backs. I generally don't want to do that. However, I do think Javonte is in this range of running backs, like cap-wise, that it actually makes sense to pay because he's not going to get 12, 13, $14 million a year. Like he's just not in that range, right? He's not in the Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey mold, but he's in that $5 to $6 million range now, I would assume. I think he's getting $3.5 million this year. I would expect a pay raise. All things considered, I would like to see the Cowboys bring back Javonte because it just is one less need that you have to fill in the draft or in free agency, right? And I think having a guy that is reliable, that will run between the tackles, that'll block his butt off is valuable. But if you see somebody, in the last month of the season that isn't creating big plays, and it does look like he's slowing down, maybe you're less willing to give that guy $5 or $6 million a year. And he's right back into the tier that we saw him last year of Rico Dowdle at 1 year, $3 million, or Javonte 1 year, $3 million.
Yeah. And I think even if he does come back and and comes back for, like, say, another 1-year deal potentially. I think the Cowboys need to do more of a job of kind of making sure that there's a second back, right? And making sure that they've got more of a rotation, because not so much like a rotation between, a true split backfield, but you just need to make sure that you're not incurring so many touches for Javonte Williams.
And that's the other thing. I'm really interested to see how he plays, because there's one thing of, like, let's say he gets $6.5 million in free agency, and that's his market. Are you better off doing that and drafting a running back on day 3, or are you better off paying a Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker $12 million a year, whatever the number ends up being? How big is that gap between those two guys and Javonte Williams? This year, Javonte's been better than both of them, but you also have to project forward a little bit and maybe take those guys out of their offenses and see what it looks like in Dallas.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was getting at, is that I think, it's not even necessarily about how much you're going to pay Javonte Williams, but how much do the Cowboys want to spend, or how much resources do they want to put towards the running back position going into the offseason, where they have a lot of other stuff on defense that they need to take care of. So yeah, it's about, like, do we want to re-sign Javonte Williams? And do we want to potentially pair him with somebody else? Do we need to get a second veteran running back? Do we need to plan on potentially drafting a running back to kind of pair with Javonte Williams? Or do we feel comfortable about re-signing him and then kind of piecemealing together a backup plan for him, much like they did this year? These are things to consider. And I think the last few games of the year will kind of tell you, because here's the thing. Let's say he doesn't play well, and you're not going to necessarily want to repeat this situation where he kind of tapers off at the end of the season without extra, because your hope is that you're going to be in the playoffs next year and that you're going to have 3 or 4 extra games to play by the time that this time of year rolls around. So you want to be able to finish strong. And if you feel like he's not able to do this the way that we've been using him these last few years, then maybe you need to start budgeting for having a second running back that you're going to give a healthy amount of carries throughout the year, just to limit the exposure of Javonte Williams.
Yeah. What really is messing Dallas up, and messing is the wrong word probably, but, like, they don't have a second or a third round pick in this upcoming draft.
Yeah.
And I think if you had a second round pick, you'd be like, oh, just bring Javonte back on a 1-year, $4.5 million deal, and then draft the guy that has some juice in round 2 and have that guy take over in 2027. But because you don't have those picks, and you don't really, at least I don't really want to spend a first round pick on a running back, it does make this a difficult conversation. I think Javonte has been an awesome free agent signing for the Cowboys this year, but I do wonder if the next 4 games are going to kind of set his market.
Yeah, again, like, I think it's not even just a cut or kept on the team sort of like of grading scale that we're going on, right? There's like lots of different stops between, like, based on how he performs these last few games. So it really is going to have an effect on how much he's getting paid, whether he's going to have a very, prominent running mate next year. Lots of things to be determined by the Cowboys running back field based on how Javonte performs these last few games.
I want to add in one more player before we get to Sam Williams. Jake Ferguson. Now, the Cowboys signed Jake Ferguson to a contract extension during training camp when the Micah Parsons stuff was going on. But outside of the touchdowns, and I know that's burying the lead a little bit, but Jake Ferguson is averaging 7.4 yards per reception this year. Jason Witten, at age 39 for the Cowboys, averaged a full yard more per catch than what Jake Ferguson is doing. He averaged 2.5 yards more after the catch than what Jake Ferguson is doing right now. And I just wonder, if Ferguson continues to struggle a little bit, maybe that opens up the door for the Cowboys to consider, like, a round 1 tight end to really upgrade this offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's the numbers are really weird, right? Like, because you can paint
bad.
You can paint them all kinds of different ways. If you wanted to say, like, he's a great red zone weapon, like, you got all these touchdowns. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you watch the tape, he's not had a good year. Like, there's no way to like, watch it and think that he's had some kind of spectacular year. And you mentioned it, right? Like, obviously, all the targeting near the goal line is also not helping his numbers, as advanced metric numbers, right, as well. But even beyond that, like, you watch what's going on the tape, and it's like, what happened to the guy that was breaking, taking a swing pass out into the flat and breaking tackles and picking up 10 yards? Like, it feels like now you see him catch the ball and then he runs into defenders at times instead of trying to avoid them. It's like the thing that made him special that you wanted. It kind of has gone away. So, yeah, I think, you probably could give Ferguson one more year at this point. But, I mean, it's just because you just re-signed him to a deal. But it's like, you look at the situation, and if you can't get any more production from him in these last few games, you may want to consider at least trying to find a way to supplement that by, I don't know, drafting a pass catching tight end or signing somebody that can do it.
I got a stat for you. Since week 3 of 2024, Jake Ferguson has more fumbles than 50-yard receiving games. Like, that's how bad it's been. And the Cowboys are paying him like a top 10 tight end. We know that he's not a great run blocker. He's putting the ball on the ground. He's dropped a lot of passes this year that, frankly, he shouldn't drop. I think it's really important over the next month for him just to stabilize the season a little bit and give the Cowboys front office some confidence that he is the right guy for this job long term. That's all.
I think that's fair. I mean, because he has just not performed the way we've expected him to, not to his contract and not to what we've seen these last few years, to be honest.
All right, let's talk about Sam Williams, who is entering the final 4 games of his rookie contract with the Dallas Cowboys. What does his future look like? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. There's no reason to let big wireless drain your wallet, especially during the holidays. And right now, Mint Mobile is running their best deal of the year. All of their unlimited plans are 50% off. That means you can lock in 3, 6, or even 12 months of unlimited premium wireless for just $15 a month. It's the easiest way to take your overpriced phone bill and just give it the full Scrooge treatment. And what makes this even better is how easy Mint makes the switch. No contracts, no nonsense, just real savings and real quality service. Switching to Mint lets you keep your same coverage for a lower price, and setup takes only a few minutes. You can bring your own phone and number without any issues. The service is fast, super reliable, even on the go. So turn your expensive wireless present into a huge wireless savings future by switching to Mint. Shop Mint Unlimited plans at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That is mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Limited time offer, upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months. Plan required, or the equivalent to $15 a month. Taxes, fees, in initial plan term only. 35 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable devices required. Available speed and coverage varies. See Mint Mobile for details. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Landon, let's talk about Sam Williams, who has had a very strange NFL career, and honestly, a very strange season where started out week 1 having 5 pressures against Philadelphia and then was awful for about 2 months, but has kind of slowly started to make some more plays for Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a weird thing, right? Like, you see it, you see the explosiveness, you see the playmaking ability. He's one of these guys who just feels like a high variance player where, sometimes you're going to see him making plays, sometimes you're going to see him making plays for the other team. And then you add in all the kind of special team stuff that he's like value that he's added as a guy that's punching balls out or is blocking kicks. And he blocked a punt as well, didn't he?
Blocked a kick. He's been close to blocking a couple punts. Yeah.
Okay, I thought he might also done a punt earlier, but yeah,
I'll double check. Go ahead.
He's just but he's just been a guy that, like, at alternating times has played very well and then suddenly very poorly. And look, I think the dream of getting the kind of Sam Williams that we had hoped for early in the season, where you thought, okay, this is a guy that we were waiting to break out and maybe take a starting job.
You're right, by the way. He blocked the punt against the Cardinals. That's the one that Mosher and Landon recovered. So yes,
that's right, of course. Yeah, so I think it's just it's one of those things now where he hasn't lived up to that kind of starting billing, and I don't think that that's in the cards for him right now. But if he finishes the season strong, he's still a young guy. I think he's only like 26 or 7.
I got
25.
Go ahead.
But yeah, again, I shouldn't be saying these stuff
That's
without
all
checking
right. 26. He'll be 27 in March.
So he's young and still, and I think he has, a lot of athleticism. There still is some untapped upside there, but the question is, will that ever get fully tapped? I think he's a good guy. I just wonder about the ability to kind of create a consistent playmaking player out of Sam Williams, which is just, we've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and it just doesn't feel like we've gotten any closer to any consistency, especially on defense.
My thoughts on Sam Williams. He's been a lot of the issues for Dallas, especially in the run game, for a lot of these games. But I keep coming back to some of my thoughts on like Dorrance Armstrong, like year 3, year 4, when he was in Dallas, where, this was somebody that was buried on the bench, was not playing, but he made a lot of plays on special teams. The Cowboys signed him to a 2-year, $12 million deal. And then he really broke out. This was somebody who, did not do a lot on the rookie contract, but that year 5, year 6 started to play better. And part of me thinks Sam Williams, 24 months removed from his torn ACL, not playing as many special team snaps, maybe he will be a better, more reliable defensive end. I have no idea what his market's going to look like, though. And I think these next 4 games maybe could help set it.
Yeah, and I think for him, it's not about the athleticism, and I think that's maybe the difference between him and Dorrance Armstrong is that not that Dorrance was a bad athlete or anything, but Sam Williams is an elite athlete at the defensive end position with those kind of ball of clay sort of situation. The problem has always been about being consistent mentally, right? Understanding your technique, playing that technique the right way each time, and doing the right thing on each play. And that's the question: is do you think he can find that? Is he going to be able to find that ability, or is this going to be a situation where he's always just going to be a high variance player, and you're going to have to treat him like one for the rest of his career?
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe and follow the Locked On Cowboys podcast so you get all of the latest episodes. And did Locked On Cowboys make your Spotify Wrapped? Prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any platform, and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. And for your second listen, make sure you check out the Locked On NFL podcast. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcast. Follow Landon on Twitter @McCoolBCB. I'm @Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.